Thanks for tuning in to episode 248 of This Week in Real Estate, the tWiRE podcast, broadcast live Wednesday, September 26, 2023. What agents aren't telling you about the crash. This episode was brought to you by listeners and viewers just like you. I don't have a way for you to send me any money yet, so all I want you to do is just take a brief second and share the show with anyone that you think may be in the industry or may be interested in hearing what we have to talk about today. There's tons of great news articles that we're going to go through, talking about the economy, the slowdown, what's happening in the market. If you're joining us live, you can comment on the show, and I can display your comment. That would be on YouTube. And also, if you're joining us live, you get to see things like my mouse disconnecting. Okay, now it's back. So I can display your comments. I can talk about you, just like Scap the appraiser did. He said he's totally first today. Mike, he's also here. And Scap, you're playing golf while listening to the show and watching the show on YouTube. I appreciate the dedication. If you're listening on Clubhouse, you could raise your hand and come on up. I'll bring you up. Mike, what's up, man? Mike's joining us there. You can comment, and your comments will be on the podcast, just like Mike. Say hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
There he is. So thanks, everybody, for joining us today. We created this podcast so that you could have one place to go for succinct professional analysis of exactly what's happening in the market, kind of beyond the headlines, from those of us that are still active in the field. So I appreciate you guys dropping by. We're going to jump right into it today because we have so much to cover. First, let's talk about home prices. You would think with everything that's happening in the economy and all the terrible news that you've heard and all the news headlines, that the first thing that would start to happen is that all these home prices would start to go down. And if you thought that, you would be wrong. There's an article from Elliman that says home prices continue to rise. Actually, this is on Realtor Magazine. Home prices continue to rise despite sales slowdown. It goes into the low inventory, the low housing supply continuing to push up home prices, and that being the majority of the issue. It said in August, the average home price reached $407,000 nationwide. That's a 4% increase compared to what it was last year. So we're seeing home prices continuing to go up despite lower home sales. Everyone thinks the lower home sales is due to number one, rates, number two, inventory. Lawrence Yun, he's a chief economist, says supply needs to essentially double to moderate home price gains. So in order to slow down the home prices, we have to have more supply. Housing inventory at the end of August was down 14% compared to the year's level, last year's level, which was already at a historical low. Unsold inventory is at a 3.3 month supply. At the current sales pace, economists say that 5 to 6 month pace reflects a more balanced market. So it's still technically on the seller side of the market. The few homes that are on the market tend to sell fast. 72% of homes sold in August were on the market for less than 1 month, according to the National Association of Realtors. That's so fast. I can remember the days of 120, 90 days on market. Those days are not here. Elizabeth Nightingale, she's tuning in. What's up, Elizabeth? Thanks for joining the show on YouTube. So let's see, home sales are moderating. Still, home sales are softening due to limited supply. NER reported a total existing home sales, which reflect the completed transactions for single-family homes, townhomes, and condos and co-ops. They dropped slightly, 0.7% in August compared to July. Sales are down 15.3% compared to last year's brisk pace. I believe last year it was also down a bit. Home sales have been stable for several months, neither rising nor falling in a meaningful way, says Lawrence Yun. Mortgage rate changes will have a big impact in the short run, while job gains will have a steady positive impact over the long run. But we're not really seeing some job gains, are we? The South had a lighter decline in sales from a year ago due to the regional job growth. What's up, Jack? Jack Atteridge is also in Clubhouse. Some of you guys that it used to already make, like it would automatically bring y'all up, it's not doing that. So I'm not really sure why. I'm going to make you guys moderators too, so that y'all can help control the flow of the conversation. Okay, so that's the first article. This article basically repeats itself on Inman. They have the same news story that Realtor Magazine does. I think they probably got it from the Realtor Magazine source. The other part of this news cycle is mortgage rates. We've all been keeping an eye on mortgage rates. We've all been talking to our buyers and sellers about mortgage rates, I'm sure. They remain over 7. This article is from last week. It says mortgage rates barely budge. It's from September 21st. It says higher rates combined with high home prices are creating a housing market of haves and have-nots, says NAR's deputy chief economist. Home buyers are being forced to adjust to what is becoming the new norm. Mortgage rates above 7%. At this week's average, this was last week's average of 7.19% for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, as reported Thursday by Freddie Mac. The typical monthly mortgage payment on a median home price home of $413,000 would translate to $2,243. The elevated rates impact whether a buyer can purchase a home and how much they can afford today. Indeed, the average loan size to purchase application has this week has soared to 416. It's the highest level in 6 weeks. Meanwhile, the current homeowners can leverage a record high equity in their homes when purchasing again. They're part of a group of buyers fueling the all cash market. Have you guys, those of you tuning in, what's up, Eric? He's also joining on YouTube. Have you guys seen, drop a comment with where you're from, and then tell me if you're seeing an increase in cash purchases. I was seeing a huge increase in cash purchases last year, but I'm not really seeing a giant increase in cash purchases this year. I am seeing more people putting a large sum of money down, but they're not buying all cash. They're getting a loan with that as well. Mike, he says Southern California, yes. Drop where you're from. Charleston, South Carolina. She says cash purchases have calmed down a lot. Yeah, that's what I saw too. Maybe it's in some of these super hot markets. You're seeing the uptick in cash purchases that we saw last year. Maybe that's it. All right, so that article was from, that article is also from Realtor Magazine. Look at that. They're putting out news articles again. I wonder if that's because of all the turmoil that they've been through lately, that they're like, maybe we should put out some more news stuff. I'm just saying. All right, we have a report from Redfin as well about the Fed. Mike said at higher price points. Atlanta, SCAP, the appraiser, says Atlanta doing a lot of cash purchase appraisals. That's interesting. Is that at the choice of the person making the cash purchase? Because in Arkansas, usually if there's a cash purchase, there is no appraisal. So that's interesting that they're choosing to do an appraisal and putting in a cash offer. Elizabeth said maybe the people in Charleston sold their homes and are moving to Atlanta with cash. Yeah. Okay, so Fed projects rates will be higher for longer. So as you know, the Fed did not raise rates last week. So this report is from that. The Federal Reserve held interest rates steady at its September meeting as expected and acknowledged that the U.S. job market is slowing down. But the Fed also signaled that it expected to keep rates higher for longer than anticipated, which is likely to impact the U.S. housing market. The reason is not just because of higher than expected inflation, but rather the Fed is expecting the economy to grow faster and unemployment to remain lower than it previously did. So this was an interesting outlook. It said how the Fed changed its stance on rates for the next 2 years. I think this is a key point on this article. It says that they raised interest rate expectations for 2024 and 2025 by 0.5 percentage point each, which is a major change in their projection. As such, they expect to cut rates twice next year instead of 4 times as previously forecast. That's because they think that the natural rate, the level of interest rates that neither stimulus nor contracts economic growth, known to economists as R star, may be higher post-pandemic. This signals to the Fed that they should keep rates higher to achieve their policy goals. So higher than anticipated interest rates in 2024 and 2025. As you remember, at the beginning of the year, we had some economists that really pinned it. And they said that the interest rates would go up to 7% in the summer, and then towards the end of the year, it would moderate back down to 5.5 or 6%. And from everything that I've heard, I think most economists have basically changed their tune and said, well, we got the 7% right. They don't think it's coming down anytime soon. So there is likely another rate hike on its way. Some are arguing on the news this morning. I heard a lot of economists arguing that the Fed needs to slow down on these rate hikes because it takes sometimes 6 months to a year for the effect of one rate hike to really be seen in the economy. And at the rate that he is hiking rates now and has hiked rates already, that we will really see the impact of those in January of next year, starting in January of next year. So if that is the case, then we could be in a world of hurt next year as, jobless claims increase and the economy starts to slow down, maybe even into a recession. That's what a lot of economists are saying. I will also remind you that Steve Harney, a couple of weeks ago at the Tom Ferry conference, said that he had talked with a ton of economists, and hands down, economists across the board agree on one thing. No one knows. And I actually met with a client that wants to sell their house, and he is applying to work for the Fed as one of their economists. And I told him what Steve said, and he said, Steve's exactly right. He said, no one really knows. And I'm applying to work for the Fed, and no one really knows. So it's a really kind of a wait and see type of environment that we're in. Redfin was on the news, I think yesterday, the CEO, founder of Redfin, and they asked him, like, how do you plan for this? What do you do? How do you budget? And he said, you don't. You just look day by day and see what's happening today, and you handle what's happening today. And I think that is where a lot of people are. I mean, we're looking for ways on my team to cut expenses without affecting volume and figuring out ways to increase our volume. We're looking for ways to save money in the downturn, but still spend as much as possible so that we can continue to get the leads that we get to close the number of homes that we want to close. So year to date, I think we're at 106 closed and pending. So we're selling houses. We're doing okay, but we're still not doing, we didn't hit our goal for the year. It doesn't look like we're going to hit our goal for the year. We'll come close, but we're not going to hit the goal for the year. So as we're goal setting for next year, we're taking a look at that. We're looking at the change of expenses. We're being more harsh with our lead conversion expenses and seeing our cost per lead and cost per click and all that stuff, and what we could get into that is free or inexpensive. So I'm not sure if any of you want to chime in on kind of what you're looking at, but I thought that was an interesting quote from Redfin, where they're really looking basically day by day, month by month. It's very difficult to put out long-term projections with the economy where it is and the volatility. No one really knows, or potential volatility. No one really knows what's happening.
Hey, Ray.
Yep. What's up, Jack?
Jack, how are you?
I'm good, man.
So you just hit on a couple of things. Number one, if you recall the predictions, our year-end predictions, I think most people were in, like myself, were in the 5 to 6% range at the end of the year. So that proves how accurate we are. And similarly, one thing I'm seeing in the Boston area, and I've seen it in the past, where when markets get tough, the bigger companies, the more corporate you are, the less you know how to react, and you react more corporately. The boots on the ground guys, and one of them was just named Inman's Broker of the Year, William Ravis, who I work for, and sorry for that heartless plug. These guys that grew up in the business and own their companies, these guys are out there acquiring smaller shops. And I guess it's how you handle or what appetite you have for this type of a market change. But you know what? I mean, it's happened before. It's happening very differently. I heard a stat that in a Boston area, I forget the specific geographical area, but that sales in August were as low as they were in 2010. Yet in 2010, we didn't have any buyers, and in 2023, we don't have any sellers. So it's this new, and I can understand why the Fed doesn't get it, because this whole economy is upside down. I forget Superman's other world, but it's what it's like.
That's good. Yeah. No, I would concur. Actually, you are leading us right into the next article too. The August new home sales plummet. There's not only a problem with pending home sales, but there's a problem with new home sales as well. And I'm not sure if this stat is in this article, but Lawrence Yun was in Realtor Magazine and maybe in another article that we're going to cover. But he basically said there's 76,000 homes for sale that are new homes for sale. And he said what it needs to be over 300,000 in order to start to satisfy demand. He said that's how far behind we are in new home construction. But August new home sales, I think this is what you were saying, Jack. August new home sales plummet amid interest and affordability woes. It says, no one can predict the future of real estate. It says sales of newly built homes were pushed to their lowest point since March by elevated mortgage rates and poor affordability conditions. New data shows new home sales plummeted 8.7% in August to a seasonally adjusted rate of 675,000. Despite the steep decrease, sales remained up 5.8% from a year ago, according to the United States Census Bureau. Newly built homes have emerged as a popular alternative for home buyers. I think it's going to be more and more that way because there's just less and less product for sale. The median sale price for newly built homes was $430,000. That's down 2% from a year ago. On the total of inventory homes for sale, including both new and existing, newly built homes represented 31% of those homes for sale in August and represented 16% of total home sales during the month. Builders are being more cautious about managing their inventory. Regionally, new home sales were up. So new homes is becoming kind of a safe haven, I guess you could say, for people that are still looking, that can't find anything on the world or on the market. Because as they're looking around, like what other choices do they have? CNBC also has basically the same news article about new home sales falling in August. Let me see if the number is there. Slowest pace since March. Sales were still 5.8% higher than August 2022. One of the nation's largest home builders, Lennar, recently reported strong earnings, but that was for a quarter where mortgage rates hadn't hit their high yet. In September, 32% of builders said they cut prices compared to 25% in August. That's the largest share of builders reducing prices since December of 2022, when 35% were doing so. The average cut was 6%. Robert Dietz, NAHB's chief economist, said high mortgage rates are clearly taking a toll on builder confidence and consumer demand, as a growing number of buyers are electing to defer a home purchase until long-term rates move lower. It is a crazy world in which 30% of home sales are new builds, and they're saying there's not nearly enough new builds to satisfy current demand because we're so short on the number of homes for sale. And until there's more homes that are for sale, the demand is still going to be elevated, which is going to increase prices, but rates aren't going down anytime soon. So prices are going to remain high. Rates are going to remain high. And this is kind of the joke is not the word, but maybe the shtick that I used when I created the title, What Agents Are Telling You. It feels like a crash, but it's not necessarily a crash in which your home values are going to go to 150,000 from 300. It's not like a Susie Orman, Grant Cardone, the end of the world is near. What's going to happen is that a lot of real estate agents, a lot of people in the real estate business, I think, are going to get hit really hard because the size of the pie is going to shrink. There's always people that are moving. There's always people that have to move. There's changes in lifestyle. There's changes in family. There's, divorce, death. There's all these things that happen in a person's life that make them have to move, job changes. So there will always be people that are moving. There will always be homes for sale. There will always be buyers that are looking to buy. When rates were like 17%, right? Some of us remember our parents talking about buying a house when it was 16, 14, 17%. They bought their first home. And then that home is worth so much more these days than it was back then. So there's always going to be people that are buying, even in a high interest rate environment. The primary issue is inventory. And because of inventory, there's going to be fewer purchases, fewer transactions in the market. And because there's fewer transactions in the market, there's going to be a lot of real estate agents without anything to do. And so I think the crash, what agents aren't actually saying, is that when we're looking at these numbers and when we're looking at the economy, I think all the agents kind of feel it. Like this is a crash that's going to affect them far more than it's actually going to impact the consumer. Because if you're sitting in a beautiful house and you've got a 30-year mortgage on it for 3.5%, and your house is right now today is worth more than it ever has been, and let's say something happens and that home price drops 20%, it's still worth so much more than it was when you bought it. And you're still sitting in a house at 3%. Like, it's still such a great situation for you. And there was a stat a couple of weeks ago that said 96% of people have a rate lower than 6%. So this is still like an incredible time for you, and you're going to be relatively unaffected as far as the housing crisis goes. The problem is going to be higher inflation, jobs, potential recession. So I think that is where the consumer is going to feel the pain. Their real estate investment is going to stay solid. There's just going to be fewer of them moving. I think where they're going to feel the pain is on the other side of the transaction. Jack, I saw you unmute.
Hey, Ray. And sorry to jump in again, but you're great topics today. I wish instead of going the direction of the Susie Orman theory, you kept that conversation going a little bit further towards the Barbara Corcoran theory.
Yeah.
And that is, the demand is only increasing over time, and there's still a lot of money out there, and something is going to trigger it and there's the great argument to be said that that prices, when something triggers inventory, whether it's lower rates or whatever it is, triggers inventory, it's just going to keep driving prices up. Put an offer in on a house last week at 31% over asking price and didn't get it.
Wow.
Yesterday I made an offer on a $575,000 house at $700,000 and we got it.
Wow.
And I know that's geographical, and the geographical market, I think, is changing to be more, hotter, closer to busier metros. But I don't see this demand going away. And I'm talking about demand from affordable housing to what our high end is waterfront properties around here.
Yeah.
Don't say Susie again. Think Barbara.
No, I love mentioning old Orman. Anytime I can say how wrong she was, I am excited about it. No, we have.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah, upcoming in the show, we actually have another Shark Tank star that weighs in on what's going on in the economy. But no, I completely agree with you. And it may be a situation in which we're in a market moving forward in which, we've heard for years all real estate is local, right? I mean, that's been the thing. All real estate is local. All real estate is local. Your market is going to depend on your market specifically. And yet we've been in a market over the last 2.5 years where it didn't seem as local. It seemed like, 24% increase in home prices, and that's about what you paid in your market too. And so it seemed like there was an overarching move in which all real estate was local, but for 2.5 years, it was kind of like the whole nation. I think we're going back to a time period where real estate becomes extremely local. And it's more important than ever to rely on your local real estate expert and rely on someone who is an actual real estate expert and not just somebody going through the motions. I think, it's going to be very difficult for the average consumer to figure out what's happening in this neighborhood versus that other neighborhood across the street. It's going to be nearly impossible for artificial intelligence to do it. So I think, part of the value proposition that a real estate agent has right now is understanding exactly what's happening in the local market. And anytime you put an offer in on a property, like Jack was saying, it goes 31% over market and they don't get it. Well, now Jack is more informed about that area and he knows what his offer didn't get. And he knows that neighborhood and he'll be able to see what that home actually closed for. But he also knows the competitiveness, how many other offers there were. And that's stuff that AI and consumers can't figure out, that we as individual agents in our marketplaces can become those local experts and kind of start to unlock that stuff and unpack it for our buyers to get the advantage and get a house in a market that's just tough to get a house. Mike says, all it takes is Black Swanish event. Oh, Black Swanish. Okay. I was like, what's a Black Swanish? Oh yeah. Black Swan event to affect that demand. Swanish. I was thinking like in my head, Swedish fish. I was like, no, what is he talking about? All right. So let's talk about pending home sales. They also dropped. So pending home sales dropped 13% year over year as mortgage rates stay stubbornly high. It's just kind of a continuation of that story, I guess. Pending home sales, the other side of new home sales, right? What home buyers are doing, they're waiting for homes to become more affordable, more affordable and for more of them to hit the market. That's kind of a weird sense. So they're waiting on more inventory and they're waiting on that inventory to become affordable. What home sellers are doing, this report says, a few more home sellers have jumped off the sidelines into the market. New listings have stabilized, ticking up slightly since the beginning of September. They're down 7% from a year earlier, but that's the smallest decline since July 2020. Though it's worth noting that new listings were falling rapidly at this time last year. Part of that is also seasonality. We know that there's less homes for sale in the fall and winter. That's how it always is. But there's also generally less buyers in the fall and winter. So if there are less homes and less buyers, then it kind of moderates the supply and demand to where they kind of both move down and up at the same rate. So usually it doesn't have a disparaging impact on the market as a whole. However, last year, one of the things we saw that happened in October is more investors were jumping into the market and regular buyers were jumping out of the market when it hit that 7% number. And when that happened, our investors did really well. They did really well in the market. So we are now sending messages to our investors saying, hey, it looks like that may happen again. And if it does, now would be the time to take advantage of the market. Okay, so that report, by the way, was on Redfin. It's their weekly housing market update that they have. This report is from today. This is on mortgage demand. Mortgage demand shrinks as interest rates hit the highest level in nearly 23 years. Mortgage interest rate just hit a level not seen since 2000. As a result, mortgage demand is now sitting at a near 27-year low. Mortgage application volume fell 1.3% last week compared with the previous week, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association's seasonally adjusted index. That volume is 25.5% lower than the same week a year ago. Based on the FOMC's most recent projections, rates are expected to be higher for longer, which drove increase in treasury yields, said Joe Kahn, the Mortgage Bankers Association's economist. Overall, applications declined as both prospective home buyers and homeowners continue to feel the impact of elevated rates. So application to refinance a home fell 1% for the week, was 21% lower. Applications to purchase a home fell 2% for the week and were 27% lower. So I think the last time we saw this, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, we saw the refi volume fell, but application volume went up for those that were looking to purchase a home. In today's case, both refi and mortgage applications to purchase a home fell. Dusty says, I think she's talking about the AI situation we were talking about earlier. She says, wait, you mean we have access to information that Google doesn't? Yeah, Google and Zillow. And so she said, pending sales are down anywhere from 4 to 12% in my local areas, but new listings are down 40 to 50% year over year. So we're back to an inventory crisis. Yeah, it's interesting how pending home sales are down 4 to 12%, but the listing inventory is down half. So that means that, you still have a very high demand. Yeah, she said we have literally half the inventory that we had last year and sales haven't slowed enough to compensate. This is what's happening in the hot markets around the nation, though there are properties that you'll list. And if the house is not perfect, it seems to sit. I think buyers, because they are paying so much more for the properties, are a little more picky than they have been in the past too. They're looking at things and saying, okay, well, if I have to fix the floors, if I have to fix the countertops, if I have to update this or update that, I want a better price on it. I don't know if that's what you guys are seeing around the market, but that's definitely something that we've noticed. Okay, so this was interesting. Interesting side note, I guess you could say, side story. A record share of home buyers are relocating to places that are impacted by climate change. So we've had all these reports. And if you recall, we actually had a report about how insurance calculates flood damage. That changed, and instead of using historic numbers, they were using future casting. So I could kind of predict what's going to happen in the future and then set your insurance rate based on what they think is going to happen. Well, there's a record number of people moving into areas that are endangered by climate change. 26% of home buyers are looking to move to a different part of the country, up from 24% a year ago, 19% before the pandemic began. Elevated mortgage rates. Well, let me get to relocations are holding up better than in metro moves, largely because home buyers are searching for affordability and remote work. So they're still looking for the remote work. I think it's going to an area because they want to be there. Like a second home, a popular second home area would be great for a first home if you can do remote work. And I think a lot of those locations are also prone to being impacted by climate change because they're like near the coast or, beautiful vacation spots or overlooks. Allison Williams, she's a Redfin Premier agent in Sacramento, said half the buyers I'm working with are moving in from out of town, all but one from the Bay Area. So it's a bit of an anecdotal story. I just thought it was interesting. Sacramento, California, for example, is the most popular destination of relocating home buyers. The typical home in the metro sells for $575,000, nearly $1 million less than a typical home in San Francisco, the most popular origin of buyers moving in. With the 7% mortgage rate, the monthly payment for the median price Sacramento home is $3,889 compared to $10 for the median price in San Francisco. Wow. So I think it's less of a story about home buyers moving to areas that are prone to climate change, and more of the story is about home buyers that are searching for homes that are more affordable. And I don't know if there's what's the phrase? Correlation without, there's a phrase. It's not condition. Correlation without causation. I think that's what we're seeing here. It has very little to do with climate change. Elizabeth Nightingale said most people want turnkey right now. With interest rates so high, their extra cash to remodel or remodel after a purchase is just not there as much as it used to be. I completely agree with that. Yeah. They'd have to borrow more money to do the remodel. Dusty says,
I totally agree. I totally agree with that. I tell people that condition has replaced location for the thing that buyers are looking for the most. And a lot of buyers don't have the patience to do any work or even vision any work. And I apologize for jumping in again, Ray.
Don't apologize. That's why I broadcast this show on Clubhouse, is so people can jump in and add their professional analysis of this stuff. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.
Dusty says, in my market, despite the low inventory, over 3 million is a buyer's market. What? But that's normal for the summer in AZ. Why fry in Arizona at 120 degrees when you can bronze in a yacht somewhere at 85? It's very true. Elizabeth Nightingale says, we love the open chat of this show. See, Jack, they love you. That's in part why people tune in, is to hear you, Jack. It is a big reason why we've always done this show live at this time, is to have other people chime in. What were you going to say? Oh, now I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Not sure if you heard me.
No, now I can hear you though. Go ahead.
My wife would disagree with that.
She needs to listen to the show then, Jack.
But one of these days, I know we've talked about it, but I'll be an actual co-host instead of a self-made co-host.
Yeah, no, I'll take them any way I can get them. So yeah, we'll have to do that. We have been having guests on the show to kind of co-host it with me, but the truth is scheduling is tough, and it's one of the jobs that I have to do is to schedule that. It's just not easy to get all that stuff done. So I apologize, but I do want to have more guest hosts on there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for everything you do. I will give you a great plug right now. You do a great job of not only just bringing everybody together, but really breaking down the weekly news sources and stories and and it's awesome. It's reading between the lines for sure. So thank you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Speaking of reading between the lines, leads us right into our next article, Jack. You're born to co-host. 1 in 10 home sellers are moving because they're called back into the office. Dun, dun, dun. This was a big thing that we talked about, maybe as the pandemic ends, everyone loved working remote. They were moving all around the country. 1 in 10 people are now moving back because they're being called back into the office. We are seeing this a lot as those offices are trying to fill the space that they've been renting for a couple of years. 1 in 5 respondents cited social views, taxes, and crime as reasons for the move. That's what we're getting. We're getting an influx of people that are moving for those. Want more space. That's a lot of people that are moving within our town. They're wanting more space to be near a family that's from out of town into town. But lower cost of living. Again, we're getting a lot of that from out of town into our town. Get a better deal on the home. Same. To live in an area better aligned with their views on social issues. We're also getting a lot of that. Lower taxes. We're getting a little bit of that. Not so much. That's probably a lot of Texans are getting that, I would say. To make better financial return on their home, they can sell in an area where they get a huge increase, and they can buy in my area, which is kind of moderate. So we're seeing that too. Concern for safety and crime. Yeah. Better weather. I mean, we have all 4 seasons. I have had Californians move here that said, I'm so excited for my first real winter. New job. We're getting some of that. Want to downsize, a little bit of that. There's not very many people that are downsizing right now in my experience, because they're actually not downsizing the payment. They're only downsizing the home, because they refied when they could get 2.5%. They have a big house, but there's not much left. So if they were to take their equity, they could do it. But it's only if they're taking a large sum of equity, and they're able to take that equity and put it on the new house, are they doing this downsize right now? If they don't have much equity in the current home, I'm not seeing people that just want to downsize. They want to live in an area with more highly rated schools. They couldn't afford the cost of living in the previous area, felt discrimination, have moved back due to work return policy. There it is. 10% of the people are doing that. Concern with impact of climate change in the previous area is 8.4%. See, that's what we're saying. It's one of the lower reasons why people are moving around. It's due to climate change. They just are not concerned about it. It is interesting though, because, we're a lot of the Airbnb stuff that happened, people that were buying homes in Airbnb locations, the prices on those were going up. Then more and more people were buying those homes in order to make them Airbnbs. So Airbnb inventory is huge. A lot of people are now moving, but not necessarily selling that other house that they bought at 3%. They want to make it an Airbnb. So if you remember about 2 months ago, there was a report about the CEO of Airbnb talking about the increase in inventory, and that being a good thing, a win for consumers, because if there's an increase in inventory, then that means that more people will be able to get a better deal on their Airbnb. The only problem is for investors who bought the Airbnb for an investment, they're going to take a hit. And so we're telling all of our investors that are buying for short-term rentals, moderate your return expectations, because it looks like for the future, it will be a little bit low. Okay, so let's look at home purchases that fell through the highest rate in nearly a year in August. I think this is a similar article to what we've already covered, but I like the graph on it. Let me show you. All right, so some home buyers. So this is the home. Oh, we haven't talked about the fall through. It was just mentioned in one of those previous articles, but we haven't talked about what actually happened. So home purchases fell through at the highest rate in nearly a year. So we've talked about home purchases falling through before, but this is the second highest, or maybe third highest. And here's the chart. Right now we're at 15.7%. That's wild. Nationwide, nearly 60,000 home purchase agreements were canceled in August. That's equal to the 15.7% of homes that went under contract that month. That's up 14.3% from a year earlier, marks the highest percentage since October of 2022. This is what I was telling you, that this is when our investors were really getting happy because they were able to get good deals. That's when rates first surpassed 7%. The average interest rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage was 7.07 in August. It hit 7.23%, which is the highest since 2021. This is Jamie Moore, Redfin Premier Real Estate Agent in Reno, Nevada, says, I've seen more buyers cancel deals in the last 6 months than I've seen at any point during my 24 years of working in real estate. they're getting cold feet. Buyers get sticker shock when they see their high rate on paper alongside extra expenses for maintenance, repairs, closing costs. Many of them would rather back out, even if it means losing their earnest money. A lot of sellers are willing to let buyers slip away because they don't want to concede to the repair request. I am seeing that a lot. I think in our area, it's more on the repair situation, the deferred maintenance that people don't want to do once the inspection comes back and they feel like they're paying a premium for the home. And now they know what their payment is with the taxes and insurance. And they're looking at that. And now they have to do these repairs. The seller is like, I don't want to do these repairs. I can just sell to someone else. That's what they think without doing the repairs. And so we're seeing a lot of deals end around the inspection time period. I think for basically the same reason as what this article is talking about. The home prices post the biggest boost increase in almost a year. And again, that's mainly due to the lack of inventory. We're getting a lot of buyers that would rather buy than rent. That's for sure. Maybe this is more of a market for first home buyers that have been responsible for money in the past. Because I think that's the only way people can afford the actual down payments on this stuff. Okay, Shark Tank star. They're back in the headlines. Oh, wait, hang on. This is going to play automatically. I'm going to pause it before it blows my ears up with the ad. Okay, there it is. So Shark Tank star Kevin O'Leary warns that real estate is in a doom loop and it has not improved. So he's not necessarily talking about residential real estate. He's going into commercial real estate. And he says, quote, "What's unique about this situation is that many of these are office spaces that are in subgrade markets. But even in cities like Boston, you'll find lots of vacancies, up to 40% of buildings," O'Leary said. There was a study published by McKinsey in July that examined the real estate in 9 superstar cities: San Francisco, New York, Houston, London, Paris, Munich, Tokyo, Beijing, and Shanghai, and estimated that the office attendance is currently about 30% lower than typical pre-pandemic level in 2019. Demand may stir back to life in the coming years, but the consultant firm projected that the attendance will be at about 13% lower in 2030 compared to the pre-pandemic. So most people are thinking that it's never going to return to what it was because of the ability for so many people now to work remote, which we've been talking about. And that's another reason why people are moving around the country. Most of these cannot be used again as offices because the economy has changed. No one saw that coming, but up to 40% of people that work in small business don't return to office anymore. So we have to repurpose it. This is Kevin O'Leary's quote. He said, "You have to take an old office and turn it into a climate-controlled storage or condominium. But cities like New York, where it's decimated those double buildings, they're just empty. You can't do that without zoning changes, and the policy there is very difficult." And Jack, you were one of the first people on our show to actually talk about how so many of these buildings aren't ready for just to be converted to residential. But I hadn't thought of the climate-controlled storage. That's a pretty cool retrofit. And if you could take basically the outside of the buildings that have all the windows and turn that outside area into, nice condominiums, townhomes, that kind of thing. And the inside of the building that is useless in a residential context, turning that into something like a long-term storage, that would be kind of cool. I like that idea. Like having a multi-purpose building because there's so much extra space that can't be used for residences. That'd be interesting.
I love that idea. It makes you think about sort of the mixed use approach with the restrictions on egresses and bedrooms.
Oh yeah.
What do you do with the core of the building? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
So locally here in the city of Chino, which is about 100,000 residents, there's a main corridor and there's one corner that is basically this blighted out shopping center, retail shopping center. And the city is getting really aggressive with like residential overlays and a lot of the zoning. So, they're trying to get developers to do a lot of mixed use where it's like part retail, part residential. So I could see that happening to a lot of these distressed commercial properties that are going to be coming on the market. where cities are just, because in California, I can't remember the acronym, but the cities are responsible for adding a certain percentage of new residents, different densities over the next few years, and they're struggling in some areas. So that could be something that happens at least here.
That's interesting too. The cost is always what they're looking at. Whenever you're trying to retrofit these current buildings, what's the cost of benefit? Is it cheaper to basically tear down the building and rebuild it from scratch? That's what they're.
In the case
Go ahead.
Yeah, in the case I'm pointing to, it would be a complete teardown.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what they're analyzing. Some of these buildings are, 50 years, 30 years old, and the amount of fixes that you would have to do to it to make it livable in a residential context would be huge. But if you can find a mixed use, I like the mixed use idea if it works. And that's the big giant if there, is if it works, if you can retrofit it. So basically the doom loop, to kind of explain more what Kevin O'Leary is saying, you have these commercial properties that are now in a lot of cases worth less than the loans that are on them. And so when it comes time for them to refinance the loan, which is what they do, the bank is going to say, no, we're not going to refi at that price. We're going to refi at this new lower price. And the difference basically would have to be paid in cash, but that's upside down. And if it's an empty building and they're upside down on it, then the company that owns the building is just going to hand the bank the keys and say, well, here it is then. And then you have this empty building that's now being foreclosed on. Well, when that happens, the bank that's holding the building can't give out that much in loans. And they're taking a loss on the loan that should have been repaid them that wasn't. And the building is not worth the rest of that loan either. So they're taking a huge loss on these commercial, and a lot of these buildings are held in regional banks. And this is what the fear is that I think there's like 4,100 regional banks around the country are going to really feel the impact of the commercial market going under. And then that means they're going to have less money to give. This is the doom loop. And I honestly don't know what's going to happen with it. I mean, if regional banks can't give out money, then there's a lot of regional banks in your market right now that make regular home loans. If they're holding extra commercial paper, extra commercial buildings, then they can't give out the loan. So, and there's a lot of Fed regulations and stuff like that put on it. So I'm not really sure how that's going to end, but that's the doom loop that Kevin O'Leary was talking about, the Shark Tank star, Mr. Wonderful. Isn't that what he calls himself? Mr. Wonderful. So it's kind of a wait and see as far as what's going to happen to the commercial market. As more people are called back into the offices, though, you may see some of those start to fill back up, but I just think there's going to be some that go under no matter what. The next article is interesting too. I've talked to a lot of investors around the country, and one of the things we continually hear is that they're coming to us because we are very landlord friendly in our marketplace, and they're coming from areas that tenants have more rights than landlords. So this was an interesting story on Fox. There's a handyman that found a clever way to remove squatters from their mother's house. So if you are in a market in which tenants basically have more rights than sellers or than owners, you should check this out. Basically, his dad passed away. His mom had a house. Squatters filled the house. They were trying to sell the house and get the squatters out, but they couldn't because the squatters have basically tenant rights. So what he did is he filled out a rental agreement with his mom so that he could rent the property. It got notarized so that he was the official tenant. And because tenants have more rights than the owner, he just basically moved in on top of them. He waited outside the house until he saw the tenants leave the next morning, or the squatters leave the next morning. And then he moved in, moved all their stuff out, changed the locks, installed cameras, and said, I'm the tenant. What are you going to do? And the owner couldn't do that. The owner couldn't get him out like that because the squatters had rights, basically like tenant rights. But because he was the tenant and an official renter of the property, well, he had rights. And it's a genius move. He started a new, United Handyman Association founder Flash Shelton is the guy's name. So I thought this was genius. I think he also now runs a, what's it called? Like a not-for-profit type of situation in which he helps other people across the U.S. do this. I'm looking for the name of it right now in the article. I can't see it, but just look up, if you go to Handyman finds clever way to remove squatters, you'll see the guy's story. Oh, I thought you were talking about, oh, well, sorry guys. I missed some of your comments about the previous article. My bad. But anyway, we actually sent this to some clients of ours that have squatters right now in California, and they have a family home that they've had, or a family investment property they've had for years. And for like 15 or 20 years, there's been squatters living in a portion of it, and they have not been able to get them out. So I sent them this. I was like, here, I never thought about renting it to somebody that would basically go squat on top of the squatters. And because they're tenants, they have rights. It's genius. Okay. Next up, we have some industry tea coming up. Does anyone have squatters, by the way? If you have squatters, put a 1 in the comments. And you have to try this. Okay. Next up, we have some industry tea. Remax. They are in the news because they settled the bombshell. They settled their portion of the bombshell commission lawsuit for $55 million. The National Association of Realtors basically had this exact same response as when Anywhere, with the asterisk, settled their side of the lawsuit. So both Remax and Anywhere has settled their side of it, promising that they would alter their behavior. It all has to be approved by the judge still. The settlement resolves the claim in the lawsuits that are similar to claims on the nationwide basis against Remax and the company, their subsidiaries and affiliates, and Remax sub-franchises, blah, blah, blah. By the terms of the settlement, Remax agreed to pay a total settlement amount of $55 million into a qualified settlement fund. In addition, Remax agreed to make certain changes to its business practices. In the filing, they noted that the proposed settlement is subject to preliminary final court approval. If approved by the court, the settlement paves the way for a clear path forward for Remax and its brand and its franchises and its agents, removing the uncertainty of ongoing litigation related to the cases. So you have to wonder, I mean, I guess they're just taking the $55 million as a loss leader, because they say, like, we didn't do anything, while Remax LLC steadfastly refutes the allegations presented in the lawsuit. This forward-looking decision will make the best interest of Remax. Well, then how, if you didn't do anything wrong, then how are you going to do anything different? If you're saying we didn't do anything wrong, we didn't do anything, we disagree with what the lawsuit is filed for, we didn't do anything wrong, but we're going to make certain changes to its business practices. What are you going to change? If you didn't do anything wrong, what's going to change? And how would changing it fix it if nothing was done wrong? The settlement, and that's the same thing, by the way, that Anywhere said too. So I'm not getting on to Remax. I'm just getting on to people that are folding. But you know, in other states, in Arkansas, I think we're relatively shielded from any of this because how our contracts are written and how it's disclosed, and how I've been doing paperwork now for 17 years, making sure everybody knows who's paying anyone and where the money's coming from. So maybe in other states, it's not done like that. And those are the changes that they're going to make. Maybe that. They're saying they didn't do anything wrong because they followed the state rules and laws, but they're going to change their business practice to be more disclosure-y about what they're doing. I don't know. Of course, the other side of this is super happy that, you know, another one has settled with them. NER says settlement is always an option for any party in any litigation. That's the same thing he said last time. Recent settlements do not change how the case is presented to the court, nor NAR's commitment to defend ourselves. We're fully confident that we'll prevail in proving the lawfulness of the rules under attack. $46 million is what NAR spent on marketing. I think $6 million is what they spent on their attorneys. That's going to be interesting. Olivier said there's going to be a lot of changes in the industry over the next few years. Yeah. By the way, Olivier, thanks for joining us. I know you had a busy day of showing and such. You are late, but that is fine. I'm glad you're here now. I have a question for you. In Canada, what's the percentage of people that own homes in Canada? Canada has totally different rules and laws. Well, I'm not going to say rules and laws. You do have different rules and laws. I mean, that one about maple syrup is quite ridiculous, but the financing options that Canada has, you have to be pretty well off to buy a home in Canada, and people don't really bat an eye. It's just the way it is in Canada. It's very different from the US. I feel like you can have far less money in the US and buy a house. You can be far less well off. You don't have to have your life together to buy a house in the US, but I feel like in Canada, you kind of have to have stuff together. So I'm curious what the percentage of people who own a home in Canada is. Because the percentage of people who own a home in the US, the last time I checked was around like 60% or something. But I'll find that. Yeah, 61%. 61% of people. Oh, wait, no, wait, that's stock. Who owns a home? I think it's in the 60s. 65.9%. So it's even higher than that. 65.9% of people own a home in the US. Elizabeth Nightingale, look at you with the 65. Woo, quick, get a number crunch on that. It's the feed. The internet is slow in Arkansas. The internet is sometimes a little slow here, I have to admit. He said it varies by province, but it's about 2/3 owner, 1/3 tenant on average. Well, that's 66%. So that's about the same, I guess. That's it. That's higher than I thought it would be, honestly, Olivier. I figured it would be like 40% up there. But no, the Google number crunch agrees with you, 66.5% in Canada. That's wild. Like you have to have your stuff together in Canada to buy a house. And they have way more people buying a house, which is kind of why I'm looking at our real estate market. And that's, by the way, some of the highest. I mean, people are saying like, oh, it's the worst time since the World War for people to buy a home. Well, like only 40% of people owned a home around that time. The Great Depression, the World War, all that stuff. Yeah, that's what it is. The worst time. Fewer people can afford a home since the Great Depression is what the quote was. That's just not true. There's like 20% higher right now than that time period. So I feel like based on what we're seeing in Canada, in which you have to have your life together to buy a house, and then what we're seeing in America, in which you need more, you're going to need more. You're going to need more down payment. You're going to need more money. You're going to have to pay your own buyer's fee. For that stuff to happen here, I don't know that it's going to make that much of a difference in the percent of people that are going to be owning a home. Okay, this next article is interesting. I put out in the contributor chat. If you want to join the contributor chat, let me know. We talk a little bit about articles that are coming up and what's happening every week. I post some stuff early there. Oh man, Dusty says, I'm trying to figure out if this is my router or yours. It's probably mine. If it is slow right now, it's probably mine. Hopefully it's not slow. It looks very clear and beautiful to me, by the way, Dusty. Go ahead.
Do you really think that sellers paying the buyer is going to change?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to change on paper. So I think the disclosure of who pays what is going to change, but I think it's also going to allow agents to negotiate that into whatever offers they make. You know, lenders are saying, well, we can't put that in the loan, but it's already in the loan now. I mean, if you told the seller like, hey, you don't have to pay a buyer agent commission, instead just put that as a credit towards the buyer, then it would be a lower home price and that amount wouldn't be included in the loan. So it's already in the loan. And that's, I think, what you're going to have is people putting in offers, and the presentation will sound something like this. Mr. Seller, we have 4 offers. 2 of these offers, the buyer is going to be paying their own buyer agent commission. The other 2 offers, they're asking you to pay for the buyer agent commission. Offer number 1 is this. Offer number 2 is that. That's what I think the conversation is going to sound like. So the seller is going to have the option to pay or the option to accept possibly a lower offer. Maybe one of those offers was 10K below because they're thinking, well, they don't have to pay the agent commission. So let's go under list price. While another offer is 2% higher than where it's listed because they're like, well, we're going to ask them to pay a 3% buyer commission or whatever it is. I think that's the type of thing that's going to be happening in negotiating between the buyer and the seller from now on. It's going to be kind of like closing costs. Like, here's an offer with closing costs included. Here's one without closing costs included. Which one do you want? The one without closing costs included is lower. The one with closing costs is over a list. So I don't necessarily think it's going to change that much.
I don't. I think it all nets out at the end of the day, and that not much changes. And maybe this could be a question of the year-end predictions to see what happens in a year from now.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, we'll definitely have to add that. What's going to happen to buyer agency in the next year, and what's the rule going to be?
Yeah, I see nothing changes, but I'm from New England and nothing changes anyway. So
nice.
Yankee suffrage.
That's right. Hey, speaking of being up there, here's an interesting article. I posted this this is what I posted in the contributor chat. Like I said, if you guys want to join the contributor chat, just let me know. I'll throw you in there. But the question I said was, can you decide I only want to work the luxury market as a real estate agent? I'm only working luxury. I'm only working homes for sale. I'm not doing any rental at all. Can you do that? And I think the answer is generally yes. But then if you follow it up with, okay, well, can you decide not to help someone that is looking for a rental and they have a Section 8 voucher? Well, if you're only a luxury agent and you're not working rentals and the National Association of Realtors says you shouldn't work outside of your area of expertise, then you would think, and I think most agents would say, no. You could say, no, I don't work rentals. That would be a terrible choice for you to try to find a rental property because I don't even know how that works. Well, Douglas Elliman agents recently found out that answer is no. Apparently you can't decide. And this is what a current lawsuit is out there about. I found the information on The Real Deal. Elliman fair housing suit picks at agent confusion. There were these top luxury agents in a town were contacted by someone who had a Section 8 voucher. They said, hey, will you help me find a home? In most cases, they were like, I don't do rentals. And in those cases in which they did that, they're now being sued for discrimination. And this is the confusion about what we can and can't do as real estate agents in this. Tamir Shemesh initially offered to help, but ignored follow-up inquiries from the Section 8 voucher person who identified herself immediately as Section 8 on a call and initial emails. Others like Noble Black told Newkirk is the Section 8 person, that they didn't have any listings at a price range. Some agents expressed confusion about what Section 8 was. Others ignored the outreach altogether. Compass, Elliman, Brown, Harris, Stevens, and Caldwell Banker Warburg hold regular training and discussions on fair housing, including, according to representatives for each brokerage, and agents are required to take 3 hours of education. But confusion seems to be pervasive in the industry, despite firms' overwhelming pledging commitment to education. This is a question from Stephen Christie, an Elliman agent in New York. Don't agents have the ability to say, hey, I work luxury. I do not do rentals, and I don't service areas outside of where I choose? Dmitry Petrovsky, a Cochrane agent, expressed exasperation at the idea the luxury agent would have to respond to a client in another sector of the market. I think this is his quote. He said, I don't get how agents are held liable for not working a sector. If they had listings that fit the criteria and refused to show, that would be one thing, or that would be different. But how can you ask an agent who works the luxury market? This really sounds like a staged situation to go after big names. Interesting. Olivier, our Canadian friend, says, so you're forced to do rentals. I mean, I don't do rentals because I don't like doing it. Well, I don't do rentals, but apparently and this is what was going to be probably figured out by this lawsuit if it gets anywhere. Apparently, if you're contacted by a Section 8, you would have to take them on as a client and help them as best you can. I don't even know where to get a list of Section 8 houses. I would be the world's worst person for them. Even when someone contacts me just in general from the internet, we work with them as a team. So I don't personally work with them. We work with them all together. If somebody contacted me about Section 8, I would put them in touch with a property manager that potentially has Section 8. That's our process. And that process would be the same if somebody contacts me about a rental, period. I put them in touch with a property manager that has those rentals listed. In our market, we don't even have a lot of people that put rentals in the MLS. There's not a lot of agents that work rentals at all. It's not like New York where you have, an apartment would rent for $1 million. There's a lot of agents don't even do rentals, period, because they're not listed in the MLS. You can't find them except on Zillow or Craigslist. So this is the confusion.
Hey, Ray?
Yeah, go ahead.
All housing is Section 8 housing.
Is it?
You can if you're a landlord, you can't say I don't do Section 8.
So I did look at the NAR. I don't know if it's NAR, if it's just real estate guidelines for landlords. And it said that there are valid reasons for saying, no, I don't want to take Section 8, that they will allow you to have, but it did not list what those valid reasons are. It said basically that there are valid reasons for not accepting Section 8 apart from it being Section 8. And timing, I think, was one of them. I can't remember what the other one was, but it didn't give you a list. But it did mention that there were some valid reasons not to accept it. I just don't know. Okay. I can't talk intelligently about it, honestly.
I know the one thing that I do come in contact with is that, we have a lot of people that go south in the winter, and from everything that I've seen, Section 8 requires that the tenancy be a 1-year lease. And so so that house that's only a seasonal rental, would not fit Section 8. So I guess I just contradicted myself, but,
well, this is what it says.
All regular. Yeah. That's as far as I know anyway. It's just
if the value of the voucher is not enough to cover market rent, there are few available units, or because the housing provider is not willing to accept a voucher. So that's why vouchers go unused. And then it says there are legitimate reasons for a landlord to refuse a voucher based on significant burdens required for the voucher acceptance. Numerous studies have shown that providing incentives and reducing burdens can greatly help with voucher usage. That's on the Housing Choice Vouchers, National Association of Realtors website. It does not say on there, it does not say if a real estate agent has to work. It's basically talking about a property operator, someone that owns a property or is that managing a property. That's kind of what it's saying. It's not saying that a real estate agent who's mainly doing sales suddenly has to work the rental market because they were contacted by a person with a Section 8 voucher. And I think that's the confusion. And I don't know. I asked the Clubhouse crew, the real estate networking Clubhouse crew, talking about this now. I'm actually telling them that we're talking about this now. I asked them, and Kendrick said, Kendrick Richardson, I think that's his last name, Richardson. Let me see. Make sure I got it right. Yeah, Kendrick Richardson. He said, not if you're approached by someone with a voucher, you have to work with them. So I don't know if that's a state rule, local rule. I don't know. But some people are like, yep, you always have to work with someone with a voucher. Other people are saying, no, you can work with someone that you choose or a sector that you choose. This is the confusing part. And it's never been, I've been to a lot of CEs. They've never talked about this. So I'm actually going to ask our CE teacher here locally. Basically, let's see, normally agents, this is what Daniel H. Kennedy III wrote, who's an attorney. He said, normally agents are free to choose their clients, but Section 8 holders are a protected class, meaning they cannot be denied service, whether that occurred in Newkirk's case remains to be decided, but generally speaking, luxury agents cannot ignore a Section 8 client. He says, quote, in order to carry out the purpose of the anti-discrimination law, you need to have some extra checks and balances, said attorney Daniel H. Kennedy III. While it probably isn't going to seem fair to the average agent you talk to, it's just necessary. Brokerages have an obligation to supervise their agents. Oh yeah, it goes into the brokerage stuff. Okay. We aren't allowed to specialize in certain areas or points, question mark. That's what a Compass agent, Christy Molden, wrote. We have to help every single person who comes to us anywhere in the state of New York at any price range because that's where we're licensed, question mark. So, Kendrick is here. What's up, man? Hey, I was just, we were just talking about the Section 8 and I shared what the attorney said for this case. I guess you've heard about the case with Elliman, where it says in order to carry out the purpose of anti-discrimination law, you have to have some extra checks and balances where you basically have to work with someone that has Section 8. And the question that we have that I would love your input on, Kendrick, is you have these agents that, like in my market, I don't even work rentals, period. It's not like in New York where they have $1 million rentals and, you have a luxury agent that's working the rental market. In my market, it's hard for me even to find a rental to work, period. So whenever somebody contacts me about any rental, whether they have a voucher or not, I give them the name of some property managers and I say, good luck. I don't do rentals at all. But my understanding is, based on what I've read so far in this case and the extra research, is that if you have a housing voucher or someone with a housing voucher and they reach out to you, you're expected to help them. Is that your understanding, Kendrick?
Yes, it is. And because I deal with a lot of clients now and they have vouchers and they have some type of stigma against people with vouchers as if they don't take care of their stuff. They don't have the best credit. And that's not the case. That's not the case at all.
I actually have investors that want to buy properties and only rent to Section 8 because they have great luck with them because they do take care of their stuff. Because if they don't take care of their stuff, they lose the voucher. So it's like an extra check for them. But as far as being a real estate agent, I didn't know at all that if you're contacted by a person with Section 8 that you have to help them no matter what segment you work.
So, you can help them. You have to help them as far as your equities go. So you have the right direction. At our brokers, we have a rental division. So I put them in contact with somebody that's going to help them to the fullest potential. And my brokers know the consequences of not helping somebody. So I make sure they get somebody that's going to help them fullest, even if I don't have time for it.
So if you have so if you're like me and anyone that comes to you with a rental, you put them in contact with someone that can help them. And that's what you do. And you do that for somebody with a regular rental. You do that with somebody for Section 8. I guess as long as you're doing the same exact thing for both of those situations, it's not discrimination. That's just how you work that client. Is that what you're saying, Kendrick?
Exactly. Yeah.
I got it. So the luxury folks who are working rentals, they need to come up with a procedure for what to do with clients that are below a certain price point, probably. And then whatever they do with everyone in that price point, no matter if it's Section 8 or no matter if it's a regular renter in that price point, they need to do the exact same thing, probably. I'm not saying that.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm not saying that as an attorney. I'm just pontificating of what might be. Eric says that there may be some special rules about it in New York. And this is kind of what I'm curious too. States rules around this. Section 8 falls under NYS fair housing and is illegal. It is a legal source of income and can't be discriminated against. Right. But if everyone, this is my question, Eric, if everyone in that price point, you're treating the exact same way by trying to, send them to someone that can help them that is not you, then I think they would be hard pressed to call that a discrimination because you're handling it the exact same way. Like I said, I would be terrible if you want to hire me to help you find a rental, I would be awful. I don't even know who to contact that has a list of rentals in our area. So I'd be the worst person that you could possibly use for that venture. And it would not be a service to them. That's interesting. It's an interesting discussion. Definitely something to watch out for as far as the lawsuit goes. Inman posted an article about it the other day, but they removed it. I think maybe because they kind of copied what The Real Deal did. They just kind of removed it. But look for some more articles on this as it kind of moves. I think some clarity on this issue is going to be great to have to moving forward. But like I said, we've got a lot of investors that want to buy properties and rent them to the Section 8. All right, there's two more articles I want to get to real fast, and I'll let you guys go. We've kind of gone over a little bit today. Thanks, by the way, for popping in, Kendrick. I really appreciate it. Better cuts mortgage sales team 2 weeks after the $500 million round of funding. So Better is the, if you remember, is the lender that went on a Zoom call and laid off a large portion of its people back in the day. And we've kind of been following them and what's happening. They got rid of that CEO and then they brought him back. And so now they just did a round of funding and then laid off a bunch of people right after the funding. So they laid off 1/4 of its U.S. mortgage sales and origination team, with pink slips going out just 2 weeks after the company closed. Special acquisition company, SPAC merger, which was a $500 million round of funding. He said, as a publicly listed company, we're focused on making prudent and disciplined decisions that account for market dynamics. We continue to serve both customers and shareholders for the long term. No word on if this one was done via Zoom. Where's Matt LaMarche? Y'all need to tag Matt LaMarche. This is his chance to do all the "it's time to be better" jokes that he can possibly do, and he missed the opportunity today. All right, in the last article, we've been following MV Realty. MV Realty was the group that they would basically get you to sign a listing agreement with them for like 50 years. And then they would give you some money, a 40-year. It's a 40-year listing agreement. And then they give you as little as $300. So you sign this 40-year listing agreement with me. I'll give you $300 today. You sign it. Then we just wait until you ever sell your property. And then we say, by the way, you owe us money because you sold your property and you signed the listing agreement with us. Or we could just force you to list your property and sell it with us. So that's what they were doing. They would receive the payout if the company sold the property, the homeowner canceled the agreement, or if the ownership of the home changed in any way. That's how they would receive their payout. Even a deed transfer, foreclosure, or death of the owner, they would receive a payout. This was, the problem was they were deliberately tricking the people to make money off their home ownership. That's what the Ohio Attorney General said. The brokerage operates in 33 states, has more than 500 agents. Over 3,000 homeowners across the nation have signed the homeowner benefits agreement with the company. They pay between $300 and $5,000 for the exclusive right to list their home for 40 years. MV is now filing bankruptcy. That's the update. Embattled MV Realty files for bankruptcy amid a flood of lawsuits. And I think there was a reality TV star that was also behind this company, which also gave it more. But I don't know who that reality TV star was. They were obviously a B or C list because I have no idea who they are. All right, anything to add on that? Have y'all run into any MV Realty stuff? I know 33 states. We have to have a listener of the show. All right. That's the last article. Thanks guys for listening today. It was a long one, but I think we needed it because last week we didn't have one. I was speaking out in California. I got several people that are new fans of the show from speaking in California. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to subscribe today. So hello to you. I also met like 2 people that listen to the show out there. So that was exciting for people to be like, hey, I listened to your show. I'm like, what? So that was fun. But I talked about AI and that was a fun talk. I will be in San Diego, October 21st through 25th. So if you guys are out that way, I'd love to meet up with you. So reach out. Well, we're going to be there for the Rise conference, and then we'll be in Orlando in January, February. I got to look at those dates too. So stay tuned. Be sure to subscribe, hit the bell, do all the YouTube-y things. And if you're listening to us on the podcast, which most of you guys are, I appreciate that. Be sure you rate the podcast for us. let other people know about it, share the show so we can keep doing this. All right, bye everybody. I will see you next week. It'll be October.